Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Motes. Well, we've made it to February. The Winter Olympics start today, so you know where I'll be for the next few weeks. Sitting on my rear end in front of my television, watching every Winter Olympic sport that I can. My favorite winter sports in the Olympics to watch are cross-country skiing, biathlon, and especially curling. I know there have been a few issues surrounding the games this year. Maybe some of the venues haven't come together the way the organizers and the IOC wanted. I'm looking in your direction, ice hockey rink. But hopefully once the games begin, none of that will affect the competition and we can enjoy all of the amazing athletes doing what they do best, achieving their Olympic dreams. But talk about bearing the lead, the most important thing that will happen in February, my birthday, of course. And this year, my birthday is a federal holiday here in the United States. So America, you're welcome. But enough about me. Let's start today's show. First off, let me take a listener question. Today's email comes from Robin, who says, "Hello, Aaron. I noticed that in the Darth Bane fandom, Darth Sidious is seen as something of a traitor who did everything to win, but nothing to get the next generation of Sith able to continue. Of course, it's the dark side of the Force. Playing by the ancient rules, it's not in the nature of Emperor Palpatine. If the old Sith were never able to destroy the Jedi themselves, but Palpatine did in their absence, then the old Sith would say, Palpatine only took students who are weak and unable to threaten him. Palpatine never created holocrons to preserve knowledge. He hides his Sith nature from the galaxy, even after defeating the Jedi and creating his empire. And finally, Palpatine craves immortality, not legacy. What do you think?" Well, thank you very much for the question, Robin. I agree with some of what you are saying, and I disagree with some of the other parts of what you're saying. Robin, I agree with you that I believe the members of the ancient Sith would hate Emperor Palpatine. I'm talking about the Sith that came before Darth Bane. But I doubt the ancient Sith would like any of the Sith who follow Bane's teachings and the rule of two. Maybe Revan. Personally, I think Bane would be proud of Palpatine, whether or not he liked him, because Palpy achieved exactly what Bane wanted to do. Bane wanted the Sith to remain in hiding while they gained greater and greater power and influence and pass on their teachings to an apprentice until the Sith became powerful enough to defeat the Jedi Order and conquer the galaxy. And that's exactly what Palpatine did. He was the culmination of the rule of two. Now, I agree that our good friend Sheev believed more in the rule of one himself than he did in Bane's rule of two. But I also can understand why. Because Palpatine did it. He won. So why would he want to train an apprentice to be his successor or create a holocron to store all of his knowledge for his legacy? So after he learned how to transfer his consciousness, it makes perfect sense to me that he would want to live forever through a series of clones or a series of surrogates. Even if that's a story point that I personally am not a fan of. Thanks again for the question, Robin. Listener, if you'd like to ask a question, you can send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at SW Legends Lounge. And if you'd like to get your voice on the show, just record a short message and email it in. But please record it in MP3 audio format. Now it's time for today's show, as I continue my journey through the young reader stories in the Jedi Apprentice series. Today I'll be talking about book number 9 through book number 12, all of them written by Jude Watson. Their titles are The Fight for Truth, The Shattered Peace, The Deadly Hunter, and The Evil Experiment. Listener, grab yourself a drink. Let's head in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Book number 8 is called The Fight for Truth. The Jedi Council pairs Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi with another Jedi and her Padawan, Master Adigalia and young Siri Tachi. The group is sent to Keegan, a remote planet on the Outer Rim that has purposely remained isolated from the rest of the galaxy. The Jedi have received a message from Keegan about a newborn baby girl who may be Force sensitive. Master Yoda orders Qui-Gon and Adigalia to assess the baby and talk to the parents about their options if the girl is indeed Force sensitive. When the Jedi arrive on Keegan, they're met by 2 of the planet's hospitality guides, a woman named Orina and a man named Vihad. The guides take the Jedi to meet the baby girl, Olana, and her parents, O'Mealy and Vinen. Qui-Gon and Adigalia study the baby for a few moments and realize that, yes, she is in fact Force sensitive. The news appears to make her parents nervous. Not for the baby, but toward the hospitality guides. When the Jedi Masters begin to explain to O'Mealy and Vinen what the Jedi Order can offer their daughter, the guides keep interrupting, telling the Jedi it's better for the little girl to remain there on Keegan. The guides then insist that the Jedi come with them, and they begin escorting the Jedi to their rooms. As the group walks through the city, Qui-Gon asks why Keegan has remained so isolated. The guides tell them that the galaxy is dangerous. They say that the planet's benevolent guides, Oviv and Vitan, had visions of a future where the galaxy was engulfed in darkness, where masked soldiers keep the peace through fear, and an enormous machine with the power to destroy worlds patrols space. To keep everyone safe, Oviv and Vitan decreed 30 years ago that Keegan needs to isolate itself, that travel and trade to other worlds would be dangerous to the planet. While the Jedi follow the guides, Qui-Gon motions for Obi-Wan and Siri to break off and explore other parts of the city. Of course, the Padawans are almost immediately caught, mistakenly rounded up as truants, and sent to a hidden school outside the city grounds. When Obi-Wan and Siri don't return to where the Jedi are staying by nightfall, Qui-Gon and Adigalia begin searching for them. The Jedi Masters return to the home of O'Mealy and Vinen and learn that someone from the government came and took the baby girl from her caretaker while her parents were out. It turns out little Olana ends up at the same school with Obi-Wan and Siri. Initially, the Padawans reject the lessons that the instructors try to teach them, but eventually, they start to play along, waiting for their chance to escape. Finally, after about a week, Obi-Wan and Ciri plan their escape. With the help of another student, the Padawans grab little baby Olana and try to flee the compound. They're chased by security, but just before they're recaptured, Qui-Gon and Adi Gallia arrive and rescue them. The story ends with the Jedi returning all of the students who were in the school to their parents. The Keeganites reject the orders of the benevolent guides and vote to open the planet to interstellar trade. O'Mealy and Vinen allow the Jedi to return to Coruscant with baby Olana, hoping she will be trained in the Jedi Order. First thing about this book, let me get it off my chest. The naming of all the women, O-something, and all the men, V-something, got really annoying as I was reading it. The author Jude Watson explains it as the planetary custom. If you are not familiar with someone, it's sort of a formality, almost like Mr. or Mrs. or Ms. And this is just the Star Wars version of that. But reading it over and over again, while the Jedi are speaking to the Keeganites, it just got repetitive very quickly. Apparently, on Keegan, once a person considers you a close enough friend or confidant, you can drop the O or the V. And O'Mealy and Vinen do that with Qui-Gon and the rest of the Jedi at the end of the book. I wish that was done a lot sooner. So, that out of the way, my favorite parts of the story were the parts where after Obi-Wan and Ciri get captured and sent to the school. They're there about a week. They have to learn how to work together. Ciri holds a little bit of a grudge, a little bit of resentment toward Obi-Wan from the time about a year prior when Obi-Wan left the Order, when he joined the other teenagers on Malai-Dadan. And it's taken Obi-Wan a little bit of time to rehabilitate himself within the Jedi Order. Qui-Gon was slow to take him back. The rest of the Order was slow to trust Obi-Wan. And Ciri is one of his former classmates that still holds a little bit of an issue with the fact that Obi-Wan, in her eyes, turned his back on the Jedi. Ciri is headstrong. She's about 2.5, 3 years younger than Obi-Wan, somewhere in there. There are parts of the story where Ciri keeps interrupting their instructors in the school. Instructors who are blatantly lying about other planets, other cultures in the galaxy. And Ciri's trying to tell them the truth about what's out there. But every time she does, she gets demerits and eventually different levels of punishment for both her and Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan tries to tell her, look, I understand what you're doing. You're trying to get the truth out to the people of Keegan, beginning with these other children. But our number one priority right now has to be to escape and get little baby Olana back to her parents. Once we reunite with Qui-Gon and your master, Adigalia, then we can worry about the brainwashing that is taking place here in this hidden school. That conflict between Obi-Wan and Siri, in my opinion, is the most interesting part of this story. Overall, it's a fun little adventure. I think the adventure stories I'm going to talk about in the second half of the show are a little more fun. But overall, outside of the O's and V's, this was a solid young reader's story. Book number 10 is called The Shattered Peace. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are sent to keep the peace between the planet Rutan and its moon, Sonali. The two cultures have a tradition where each ruler sends their eldest child to live on the other world for 9 years, from ages 7 to 16. Then, the children are given the choice to return home to their families or to stay on their new adopted world. The Rutan and Sonali royal families have observed this tradition for generations, and the children have always returned to their home planets. Until now. Rutan Crown Prince Lead wants to stay on Sonali, and it infuriates his father, King Frayne. Frayne believes his son has been brainwashed by Minan, the leader of Sonali, and Frayne is willing to send his troops to invade the moon to get Prince Lead back. Now, Qui-Gon convinces King Frayne to give he and Obi-Wan 3 days to find Prince Lead and speak with him to see what's really going on. Reluctantly, King Frayne agrees, but he insists the Jedi take his younger son, Prince Tarun, along with them. The three travel to Sonali and find Prince Lead. Tarun tells his older brother that it's time to come home, but Lead refuses. He doesn't want to be king. Lead wants to stay in the peaceful forests of Sonali, where he lives with his adopted family, including his foster sister Drenna. Qui-Gon convinces Prince Lead to come back with the Jedi to Rutan to speak with his father, but before he can, Lead is kidnapped by a group of Sonali known as the Ghost Clan. The Ghost Clan is a group of Sonali who have left their clans and live deep in the forests, stealing food and resources where they can. Drenna guides the Jedi and Prince Tarun to where the Ghost Clan is rumored to be hiding out. The Jedi rescue Lead without a fight, sneak him out of the Ghost Clan's hideout, and escort Prince Lead back to Rutan. Once at home, Lead tells his father he doesn't want to become king. He wants to return to Sonali. Lead suggests that his father make Tarun his heir, but King Frayne refuses. His eldest son must inherit the throne. Anything else is an insult to the crown. Frayne throws Minan's 10-year-old daughter, Yana, into prison, forcing Lead to agree to his father's demands. Of course, the Jedi break the girl out of prison, and Qui-Gon urges King Frayne not to start a war with Sonali. The Jedi then learn that the Sonali Ghost Clan that kidnapped Prince Lead was actually a group of disguised Rutanians sent by Tarun, who wanted his brother out of the way so he could be named Crown Prince. The story ends with Tarun confessing everything he's done to his father. Impressed with his younger son's ruthlessness, King Frayne releases Prince Lead from his inheritance and names Prince Tarun his heir. My favorite part about this story is its message that you can be whatever you want to be. You may be burdened by your family. You may be burdened by expectations. But you can break free of those burdens and those expectations. And you're able to chart your own path in life. That's what Prince Lead does in this story. It's also a story of sibling rivalry. Even though Lead loves his brother, and Tarun in some ways loves his brother, Tarun is also envious, not only of Lead's position as eldest son and heir to the throne, but he's envious of Lead's position in his father's eyes. King Frayne believes in the ancient traditions. The eldest son inherits the throne. And anyone who believes otherwise, including Prince Lead, is insulting not only the king, not only the crown, but the years of tradition that have led to this peace between the two worlds. It's understandable that Tarun lashes out. I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that what Tarun did was right by having his brother kidnapped and putting Drenna, a civilian, in harm's way. But it's understandable. Because while Lead is burdened with the expectations from his father and the other people of his planet, Tarun is burdened with being the second son, with being lesser in everyone's eyes. It's a story that can be taken out of any moment in human history. It's a story that can be taken out of almost any other fantasy story. But I like the lesson that is told in this story, that no matter what your parents, no matter what society believes that you should be doing, whether it's based on tradition or based on the position that you were born into, ultimately, every person has the ability to make their own choices about the life they're going to live. And I think that's a pretty cool lesson to include in a young reader's story. Well, coming up after the break, I'll talk more about the Jedi Apprentice series, go over the last two books in today's episode. I'm Aaron Moats, and you're listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Thank you for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, where we celebrate the books from Star Wars Legends. But let me take a moment and recommend a book from Star Wars canon. Convergence is the first story in Phase 2 of the High Republic Publishing Initiative. The twin planets of Iram and Arano have been fighting for generations. When the Jedi sends a delegation to broker a ceasefire, it quickly becomes apparent that the two worlds are merely pawns in someone else's game. Unravel the mystery in Convergence by Zoraida Cordova. Welcome back to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Moats, and today I'm talking about book number 9 through book number 12 in the Jedi Apprentice Young Reader series. The 11th book in the series is called The Deadly Hunter, and it's the first in a multi-book arc. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan go to a Coruscant cafe owned by Qui-Gon's friend, Didi Odo. Didi's cafe isn't exactly renowned for its cuisine. It's more a welcome place for people from all levels of Coruscant. Most of them on the right side of the law, while some of the others are a little shadier. Now, in the past, Didi made most of his money as an information broker, but his daughter Astri wants Didi to get out of that game and really give the cafe a shot to make it on its own. However, there's a problem. Someone's trying to kill Didi. A mysterious bounty hunter who attacks again while the Jedi are talking to Didi. But the Jedi shield Didi, and seeing that she's outnumbered, the bounty hunter escapes. A little while later, Didi introduces the Jedi to a thief named Fly, who stole a datapad from Senator Uta Sorn, revealing that the senator plans to retire in a few weeks. Why? Because the senator's son was found murdered about a year ago, and authorities haven't uncovered any leads. The senator has lost her fire for politics. Fly gave the pad to Didi. Maybe that's why the bounty hunter is after him. A few days later, Didi says that Astri has booked her first big client, Senator Sorn, and a scientist who works with the senator, a woman named Jenna Zan Arbor. Unfortunately, the dinner goes really poorly for Astri. But even more unfortunately, the dinner gives the bounty hunter cover to sneak into the cafe and attack again. The Jedi are able to fight off the bounty hunter and protect the guests, but Didi's daughter Astri is injured. In the wake of the attack, Didi and Astri go into hiding in the Cascardi Mountains on the nearby planet of Dunedin. But of course, it's a trap designed to lure in Didi, Astri, and the two Jedi. The bounty hunter attacks again. She fires her blaster, shooting Didi in the abdomen. The bounty hunter throws her Vivo blade at Astri, but Obi-Wan uses the Force and snatches it out of the air, just before it buries itself in Astri's chest. The bounty hunter turns and runs for her ship. Qui-Gon orders Obi-Wan to stay with Didi and Astri and gives chase. Qui-Gon starts up the ramp when a blaster shot rings out, and Qui-Gon falls to the ground. The story ends with Obi-Wan watching helplessly as the bounty hunter gathers Qui-Gon up into her ship and blasts off. Book number 12 is called The Evil Experiment. Qui-Gon Jinn wakes up to find himself shackled and chained in some sort of bubble. A voice says he's there for an experiment, to try and learn the secrets of the Force. Qui-Gon is weak and groggy, but he recognizes the voice. It's Jenna Zan Arbor, the scientist who was working with Senator Uta Sorn. Zan Arbor floods the cell with gas to choke Qui-Gon, hoping to force the Jedi to use the Force. The gambit works, but it doesn't really give Zan Arbor any real data that she can use. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Obi-Wan and Astri Odo sit vigil over Astri's father Didi, who's in a medical bed in the Jedi Temple after he was shot by the mysterious bounty hunter. It turns out the shot wasn't a blaster bolt. It actually was used to deliver some sort of toxin. Of course, Obi-Wan wants to look for Qui-Gon, and Astri wants to help. They track the bounty hunter to her home planet of Saurus. They find her home tribe and learn her name is Ona Nobis. Ona Nobis has been hired to bring Force users to Jenna Zan Arbor. And one of those was Senator Uda Sorn's son, Ren, the young man who was found a few months ago murdered and drained of blood. Obi-Wan and Astri's investigation take them to the planet of Simpla 12. There they find 3 of Ren Sorn's friends, a group of bumbling thieves who point Obi-Wan in the direction of a building where they believe Ren was experimented on. Together, the group tricks Jenna Zan Arbor into letting them into the building, but the scheme quickly goes sideways. The scientist orders her droid guards to attack, when suddenly, out of nowhere, Qui-Gon arrives. He'd escaped from his cell. Together with Obi-Wan, the Jedi destroy the droids and grab the antitoxin to heal Didi. The group turns to leave when Jenna Zan Arbor's voice comes over the speaker again. The scientist says that if Qui-Gon leaves, she'll execute her other prisoner. But who is that? Qui-Gon doesn't know, but he believes it must be another Force user. The story ends with Qui-Gon ordering Obi-Wan to escort Astri back to Coruscant to deliver the antitoxin to save Didi. Obi-Wan agrees, and then Qui-Gon turns and heads back into Jenna Zan Arbor's laboratory. These were the first 2 installments of a 3-story arc. That's similar to some of the multi-story arcs that I spoke about in the first couple episodes when reviewing the Jedi Apprentice series. I think these 2 stories were fine. I don't think there was anything in them that I disliked, but there wasn't anything in either of these 2 stories that really jumped off the page to me. My favorite parts of the Qui-Gon Obi-Wan relationship are the points of conflict between the 2. And in these 2 books, and honestly in all 4 books together, there aren't many of those points of conflict. The only thing you really get in these 2 stories is at the very beginning of the first book when Qui-Gon wants to go meet with Didi, and Obi-Wan's just not a fan of going to this cafe that's in a seedy part of Coruscant and meeting with this guy that he knows operates at the edge of the law. It's not that Didi ever really breaks the law, but he's friendly with some seedy clientele, some ne'er-do-wells. Fly the thief is an example of one. Didi is friendly with people who do break the law, and his cafe is sort of a haven for everyone, regardless of what side of the law you sit on. And for someone who is more by the book, Obi-Wan has some issues with that. But again, that's only at the beginning of the first story. After the bounty hunter attacks Didi and the Jedi defend Qui-Gon's friend, Obi-Wan doesn't really have an issue with the Jedi helping out a person in trouble. Occasionally, when Didi says he doesn't understand why the bounty hunter is after him, Obi-Wan does say, well, look at the company you keep. You've obviously done something in the past that has stepped over the line. But outside of that, there's no real debate between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. in these two stories. There's no real debate between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in any of these four stories. So, to me, these stories aren't as juicy, aren't as engrossing, aren't as interesting as a couple of the stories, particularly from episode 2, books 5 and 6, when Obi-Wan leaves the Jedi Order shortly and goes to Malai Dan. To this point, those are my two favorite stories in this Jedi Apprentice series. Those two, and then the first story after that, when Obi-Wan rejoins the Order, and he and Qui-Gon are having their feeling out when Obi-Wan first comes back. To me, so far, those have been the most interesting stories in this series. Now, one thing I do think Jude Watson does really well, at least to this point in this young reader series, is tap into the Jedi as investigators. To me, the most interesting part of Attack of the Clones is Obi-Wan the investigator. And the investigation into who Ona Nobis is and why she's attacking Dee is a pretty interesting investigation for a young reader book. It wasn't something where I could figure out what's next. I could figure out what the end game is. And even here at the end of the second story, I do know there is one more story in this little 3-story arc. I thought the mystery was portrayed pretty well. For books of this age group, I would expect mysteries that I could pretty easily solve. I'm not saying that this was a complicated mystery or anything, but there were some points along the way that did surprise me a little bit, where I thought, well, that's not exactly where I thought this was going to go, but it makes sense. So, in that respect, I think the investigation has been done well, at least through the first 2 books of this little 3-book arc, and hopefully in the next episode of the show, I'll be able to talk about the 3rd book and enjoying how the mystery came to its conclusion. That seems like a good spot to stop the show today. Listener, if you'd like to contact me, you can send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at swlegendslounge. Send me your questions and your comments. If you disagree with something I've said on today's show or on any show you've listened to, let me know. I'll read your opinion on the show. And send me your favorite Star Wars character groupings. I haven't received any of those in a while. I don't think I've had one yet here in 2026. I love getting those, and I really love reading them here on the show. They're a lot of fun. Now, coming up on the next episode, I'll recap the next group of books in the series. Book number 13, The Dangerous Rescue. Book number 14, The Ties That Bind. Book number 15, The Death of Hope. And number 16, The Call to Vengeance, all by Jude Watson. You can look forward to that episode coming out on February 20th. Listener, if you want to see the full schedule of books that I'll be covering this year for 2026, you can check out my pinned posts on both Blue Sky and Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge today. I'm Aaron Moats. May the Force be with you. And remember, there's always a bit of truth in legends.